Hi, this is Ali Arango of littleguy.cgi.com. In this tutorial, what you're going to learn how to do is to do a basic face rig. You're going to be shown how to set up shape keys on your base mesh and then shown how to connect those shape keys to bones so that you can change the expression of your character. You're going to be shown how you can, once certain bones are set up, how you can copy that setup to other bones. As I do tutorials typically, I not only explain what I'm doing, I try to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. The explanations are given in a step-by-step fashion. And I am hoping from this tutorial, while this is a basic face rig, that this will allow you to also make more advanced face rigs after watching this tutorial. So I hope you enjoy the tutorial. If you have any questions or you would like to see a more advanced face rig, let me know. If you like videos like this that are step-by-step, that try to explain just about everything that's going on, not in a sped-up fashion, then please give this video a like. That'll make the YouTube robots happy. Also, if you would like to support this channel further, you can go to my Patreon page. There'll be a link up in the upper right-hand corner, and a donation of any amount would be very encouraging and would help me out a lot. Thanks. Hi, this is Ali Rango of littleguy.cgi.com, and today I would like to show you how to do some basic face rigging in Blender 2.8. So let's get started. Okay, what you see in front of you is the result of another tutorial. I'll put a link up, or actually a result of a few other tutorials. I'll put links to those that you can get to by going to the upper right-hand corner. Okay, when I talk about face rigging, what that is well, let me back up some. If I hold Alt and then press H, you can see that there is a rig here. And what this rig does is this rig will control the body, so we can move the arms, the legs, to maneuver the character around. This bone right here controls the character's head. What this rig doesn't do is it doesn't let my character be able to make basic face expressions. So the goal of this tutorial today is just to show you how to do a few basic expressions, and hopefully from that you'll be able to rig the entire face. If you guys are very interested in this, I can make a more detailed tutorial showing you even more face expressions later on. Okay, I'm going to click on this rig. I'm going to hold Shift, select that hair mesh, and then press H to hide those three objects again. Okay, this mesh has a mirror modifier on it, so what we do to one side will happen to the other side of it. If you wanted to do more advanced face animations, you would, if you had a mesh like this that has a mirror modifier on it, you would just apply that mirror modifier. By the way, if you want to get a copy of this mesh so you can work your way through the tutorial using the same mesh, if you go to littleguy.cgi.com, as such, you'll be able to download a free version of this mesh. Okay, there's multiple ways of rigging the face. This is the way that I'm choosing to show you. However, there's other ways of rigging the face than what I'm showing you here. And basically what we're going to do here is we're going to make shape keys and then make different movements on the face. We're then going to use bones to let us control those shape keys, and that's how we're going to make our face expressions. Okay, if that sounds kind of unfamiliar to you, hopefully you'll understand as we go along. I'm going to roll the mouse wheel to zoom in closer to the face. In Blender 2.8, we have these nice controls here. So if you want to rotate your view, you can just left click and drag here. If you can put over to the upper right is where my mouse is at. You can pan the view just by putting your mouse over the hand right there. Typically when I go to views now, I'll go to view. I'll go down to viewpoint, and I can get to the different views right here. You can also click here and very quickly, by clicking right on the circles, maneuver around to the different views that are available to you in Blender 2.8. Okay, the expressions that I'm thinking about making for this is having the eyes shut, having the mouth shut, probably having the mouth smile, as well as having the character have control over the, or giving us control over the eyebrows by setting things up. So we'll put a bone here, and then a bone here, maybe another bone there as well. Okay, I'm saying armature. I'm saying bone. Bones in Blender for rigging are also known as armatures. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold shift and then right click, right? We put our 3D cursor here. Let me move that down slightly. So I just was holding shift and then I right clicked to move the 3D cursor there. And the reason why I did that was in Blender, where your 3D cursor is at, which is what this is where your objects tend to come into Blender at. Okay, so let's bring our first bone in, and our bone should come right there. It's where that 3D cursor is at. So we're going to hold shift, press A. When we do this, we can see our add to menu. And what we want to do is go to armature, and then we want to select single bone. You can see this bone came right to where that 3D cursor is at. Okay, we're currently clicked right here in this context object button. So currently this bone is named armature, and it is one armature bone. However, it would be better if we name this something like what it is, this bone is going to have other bones in it. All right, so this is going to be one object, and then the other bones that we're going to make are going to be in edit mode. So currently we're in object mode, right? So this is one object, and this one object is called armature. We're going to name this something to do with controlling the face, and then when we go into edit mode, we'll be inside of this object that's currently named armature, and then we'll make our other bones in there. So we're going to rename this face underscore control, then I'll press enter. Okay, now that we have that bone named, when we look to our upper left, you can see we're in object mode. We want to go into edit mode. In object mode, you tend to move objects around. In edit mode, you tend to make more detailed changes to the object. So we're going to go to the upper left, left click, and then go to edit mode. Okay, when we came into edit mode, this part of the bone is selected, and that's good because I don't want this bone to be that big. So I'm going to just push this bone down to make it smaller. Okay, when I push the bone down, see how the bone is partially in the mesh? So the mesh is, in a way, hiding some of the bone. When you work with bones, also called armatures, you typically don't want the mesh to hide the bone. So what do you do about that? Well, when you look to the right, you can see this button. It looks like a square. We're going to scroll down, and then you can see these options here. So these are the options inside of this whole menu called, viewport display, right? See this in front? We're about to put a check mark here, and when we do that, we'll be able to see this bone even though it's inside of the character mesh. So I just put the check mark there, and now that bone will show through the character mesh, and that is how I would advise you to work with bones, as it just makes them easier to work with. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the main part of the bone. I don't want to select the top or the bottom because I want to actually move this whole bone. So now I'm just pushing this down, and I'm thinking that when I push this bone down, we're gonna set things up here in this tutorial to have the eyes shut. So that's why I have this position, kind of towards just the side of the eye. I know, even though we have this in front on, I know that this bone is inside of the mesh. I don't want that, so I'm gonna hold the middle mouse button to see the side. So by holding the middle mouse button, I was able to rotate the view. It's another way you can rotate besides just selecting there. And I'm going to take this manipulator here, which is the move manipulator, the move manipulator, and I'm just going to push this forward. And I'm just pushing this bone forward so that it's not inside of the mesh. So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate back so we can see the front of our character's face again. Okay, so we have this bone here to, we're going to use this to have the character shut its eyes. So what I'm going to do is with this bone selected, I'm going to hold Shift and then press D. Then I'm going to right click. And when I right click, it's kind of like almost like a kind of canceling. So I right click just so I know that the bone didn't move from the position that I have it in. However, I did duplicate this bone. So again, I pressed Shift D to duplicate, right? Because I have this duplicate, I'm going to push this down to about here. And we'll use this bone to let's push this over closer. We'll use this bone to control the character's mouth. And so this will control the character's mouth. So we're going to hold Shift and then press D. And then right click. So when I press Shift D, I duplicated the object. Doesn't look like I did anything. It's just because that duplicated object is right on top of the other object. So we're going to push this bone up to here. And this bone is going to allow us to control the brow. Now be aware, even though I have these bones in front of the face, I placed them here because it just makes sense to me. They're near what I want them to control. Once this is set up, like we're currently in edit mode, you can select these bones and then move them to the side. They'll still control the face in the same way. The reason why I'm saying that, sometimes you'll see face rigs where there'll be like a box right here, right? And then there'll be a drawing on it that has like eyes and a mouth control. These bones will work as we're going to set them up to work over here as well. I just want you to be aware of that. Okay, so we have our bones. Now we want to name these bones. So if I click on this bone and then I click on this bone, so I'm looking to the right of the screen, and the button looks like a bone, right? This bone is called bone. This bone is called bone.001. This bone is called bone.002. So what we'll do is give these bones names that make more sense. So for this, we're going to name this E underscore control, or that's what I'm putting, so you know that that means control. So just CTRL. I'll press enter to lock that in. Now be aware, currently we have a mirror modifier on this mesh. So what I do to this side will happen to this side. In the future, though, if you were doing a more, if you wanted more control, typically what you would do is this would be named E underscore control dot, what is this? Dot L for the left-hand side. And that's important for when you are posing your bones. So we're not doing that here because we have a mirror modifier on these bones. But I want you to be aware that's what you would do if you had one bone to control just this eye, as well as one bone to control the other eye. Okay, so we have our armature bones named. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. So now let's set up to do our first face pose, which will be us having the eyes shut. So I'm going to go to the upper left and then go back to object mode. Okay, here in object mode, I'm going to left click on our character mesh. And then what I'm going to do is I'm looking for, it looks like a triangle with circles on it, this button right here. So I'm going to left click that and see in here we have something called vertex groups. Then we have shape keys, and our interest right now is on these shape keys. So the first thing we want to do is look to our right, click this plus button, right? So when we do that, we have this basis. Now this basis is like it says, the basis for our shape keys. We do not want to do anything with this basis. We just want to make this. And then the first work that we're going to do, which is going to be having the eyes shut, we're going to do when we make this second shape key. So we're going to click this plus button again. And now we have something besides the bases, and this will be what we use to control our eyes shutting. Okay, so this is named key 1 by default. Let's double click here and give this a name that makes more sense. So we're going to name this, name this blank. All right, so what we want to do now is we can either go into edit mode or scope mode and actually make the shape key, which is the basically expression is what we're doing here. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to the upper left with this selected, by the way, and then go to edit mode. Okay, here in Blender, like with most things, there's multiple ways of doing things. This is my way. One of the things you want to think about when you are holding shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan down, and hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. How do you set up the face? So I would recommend when you shut the eye for you to grab the top part of the eye here in edit mode. So we're on edge select. In Blender, you can select vertexes or vertex. You can go to vertex. This is you select a vertex here or vertices by selecting this button. You can click here to select edges or select here to select faces. So we're on edge select, right? So what we want to do is I'm going to zoom in even closer. I'm going to hold control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. We can see these edges right here, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to, you know what, let's actually grab these three. So I'm going to click here, hold shift. By holding shift, I'm able to select more than one edge at a time. I let go of shift, right? Up here, this is called the proportional editing tool, right? I'm going to press the O key to turn that on. I could also just click here to turn this on. When I left click here, we have this right here, this connected only. What this proportional editing tool does is it allows you to select more than one vertex, edge, or face at a time. So normally when I grab here and if I try to move this with the proportional editing tool, everything will move. However, if I click here and then select connected only, which is what we want to do, by the way, so we're going to left click to put the check mark next to connected only. Now we'll move just what's connected to here. And that's what we want because we want to select this eyelid, push this down to slightly more than halfway, then select this bottom eyelid and then pull that up as we work our way through setting up, having the eyes shut. Okay, so with this selected, what we're going to do is press G. See that circle that popped up? That's the area of influence of our proportional editing tool. So what we're going to do is press Z. See that line that just popped up there? That line is showing us the Z axis, and that line is actually going to help us because it's going to help us constrain our movement to just going up and down. So I'm going to move my mouse, and you can see there's the eye going down. Now see how the top of the eyelid is moving but not the bottom? And that's what we want. And that's what that connected editing tool does. So I'm going to shrink this somewhat. So I'm going to pull this down to about there. Now I'm going to left click to lock that movement in. I'm then going to left click on nothingness to deselect. You can also deselect by holding Alt as well as A. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan the view. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to hold Control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm still on edge select, which is what I want. I'm going to left click here, hold Shift. Nope, I don't want that. So I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Left click there. I'll hold Control as well as the middle mouse button and then push up to get a smooth zoom. I let go of Control. I'm holding Shift. Now I'm letting go of Shift. So I have these two edges right there, right? So what I'm going to do is press G. You can see that circle. That's our circle of influence. I'm going to press Z. Now, as I move up, I can shrink this area of influence by rolling my mouse. So I'm rolling my mouse now to shrink the area of influence. So now we have this bottom eyelid touching the top eyelid. However, we still have these spaces here. We really don't want this mesh pushing into that other mesh. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Well, we're going to roll the mouse wheel back, and you can see this other eye is responding to what we're doing here because we have a mirror modifier on this mesh. Mirror modifier copies basically what happens on one side to the other side. So what we're going to do is left click on nothingness to deselect. We're going to left click go to the upper left, go to object mode, right? Our eyes open back up. And we still have this blink shape key selected. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click this, looks like a pin here. And when we click this pin, this is going to allow us to go to scope mode and work in scope mode on this shape key. So what we're going to do here in scope mode is we're looking for this brush right here, the inflate brush. And the scope mode in Blender works similar to how ZBrush works if you're familiar with that program. It's also useful for things like this. What we're going to do is press the F key to make our brush bigger. And then we're just going to, I'm just left clicking and letting go. And you can see by inflating this area here is just allowing me to have the eyes be shut. It allows me to very easily deal with that, the spaces. If you're looking at this here, basically what you're seeing here is like if you're like, oh, what is that? You're looking at a mesh that has a normal map on it. So normal maps, without getting into it, allow low poly meshes to look like they're high poly. So we're actually moving the low topology mesh. I mean, yeah, moving the low poly mesh as well as moving a normal map. So that's why you see a little of that. If you're just if you were wondering what that was. So anyway, we're going to go to the upper left, and then we're going to go to object mode, and then we're going to go to the right of the screen, and we're going to take away that pin now. Okay, as I look at this, I can see this right here. I put a solidify modifier on this just to give the lips more thickness. So what we can actually do is when we see something like this, we can go to the basis key, shape key, and then we're on edge select. This is just the, let me select that. I'll press G and then shrink my area of influence, and I'll just push that piece of geometry in. So because I changed this on the basis key, everything will be changed as far as this. So I'll just go to the upper left and then go back to object mode. Okay, I'm going to zoom back. So we want the mouth to be shut, right? So let's work on that. Okay, so how do we work on that? Well, we have our basis that we don't want to, for the most part, don't want to touch unless we're doing things like fixing that piece of mesh was coming through. But generally, as far as expressions, you just want to leave this. So here's our blink. We want to have the mouth shut now. So what we're going to do is go to the right, click this plus button. Now we have this shape key too. Okay, so we're going to change this name to something that makes more sense. So we'll name this mouth underscore close. And I'll press enter to lock that in. Okay, what we're going to do now with that mouth close shape key selected is go to the upper left and then go to edit mode. Okay, when we look up here, we can see that we still have our connected proportioning editing tool turned on. That's good. So we're going to use a very similar technique. So we're going to hold control, hold the middle mouse button to zoom in, hold shift as well as the middle mouse button to pan, control as well as the middle mouse button to zoom in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the edge here, hold shift, and then I'm going to press G and then Z, and I'm going to move this the mouth down some like that. I'll grab this edge right in the center. I'll press G, shrink the area of influence by rolling the mouse. Press Z, pull that down some. I'm going to left click here, hold control, and then while holding control, left click here. That did something called the shortest path technique. When you click an area and then hold control and select another area, the areas in between are selected. So with that done, I'm going to press G and then Z. Just move the mouth down some more. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click the edge here, press G, then Z. Move this up some. And this here, that's the solidify modifier. If you're like, what is that? I'll press G, then Y. Pull this back some. See if I can grab here, G, then Z. And then again, we have that space. So I would recommend you do like we did before. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Then go to object mode. Select this pen. Go to our upper left. Go to scope mode. Go to our inflate brush. And inflate. Now see this right here? What we can do here is hold shift. And what this does is activate the smooth smooth brush, and the smooth brush is so used to pressing shift. There it is. This is the smooth brush. So when you use scope mode in Blender, when you press shift, you automatically use this brush, even though you don't see things. Even though you don't see the brush switch to here, you're using that. So remember, we have a normal map on here. So if you're like, what is that? What is this? It's the normal map. Typically, if you want to work with low poly object, you're going to work with normal maps. They're very good, or sometimes you'll have, some things like that. Okay, now we want the mouth to be shut pretty much without him making an expression. So what I'm going to do is when I press F, I can pull. This is kind of like the proportional editing tool, except this is actually dealing with the area of a brush. So what I'm looking for, there we go, the grab brush. So we can kind of manipulate this so that we don't want this to look like he's making an expression just by having his mouth shut. And you can make, small adjustments to try to adjust the face. But generally, we have the mouth shut. I'm going to press F, shrink this brush. What we're going to do now is go to the upper left, then go back to object mode. Now we're going to go to that pen and uncheck that pen. Okay, so very similar to before, we have the setting here. If we take this up, you can see now that our character shuts their mouth. Okay, let's do the brow control. So we're going to go to the right, click the plus. We'll rename this brow underscore control, then press enter. Okay, this is actually pretty easy to set up. With the brow control selected, we'll go to the upper left, go to edit mode, and we'll select this area here. And for this, we'll go to face select. You know what? We'll go to vertex select. We'll press C. C activates paint select. We'll grab this area here. Well, let's grab first this area here. Press C again. There we go. Now we'll press G and then Z. And what we can do is pull down and we'll roll our mouse So now when I grab that line, so now I'm going to press C, grab this line here, press G, then Z, pull this down. some like that, so we get the eyes coming down somewhat. I'll left click to deselect. I'm going to click here, hold shift, click there, press G, then Z, and I'm going to pull this down so that the eyes are affected somewhat like that as well. Then I'll left click to deselect. What we can do with this, since most likely I'm gonna hold controls. I'm gonna hold in the world. Okay, I'm gonna roll the mouse wheel in, and I want the nose to flare some when the brows are coming down, because I generally would be using this most likely when the character is like upset, angry, think angry. So I'm going to press G and then Z, shrink the area of influence, but I'm going to lift this up some, and I'll click here, press G, just to have the nose change somewhat. So it's not exactly just brow control, it's actually kind of showing the character getting upset some. Like that. And then, making this expression, you would do this with we know what let's see if we can enhance this, because we could use with some more geometry there. So what we're going to do is go to object mode, right? Let's go to that basis. Let's go to edit mode. Let's add some more geometry in. I'm going to hold control, press R. I have a rig on this. It shouldn't be affected by adding that in. Everything should still work correctly. And what we're going to do is, that just gave us more geometry to work with. We'll go back to this brow control. We'll go back into edit mode. We can see here's this. So now with this more brow control, let's press C. Let's press G and then Z. Yeah, that's better. That's much better. So we'll click here. And the more time you take with this, the better results that you'll get. And then this here is acting a little strange. Let's press G. Just adjusting this here. All right, so we'll go to the upper left. We'll go to object mode. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll take this setting up. I like how that looks. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna click here, hide this. Click on the base mesh. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do now is click on our armature that has these other bones in it. We'll go to the upper left, go to edit mode. We're going to make one more bone, and I'm going to use this to show you how multiple expressions can work together. So with this bone selected, I'm going to hold shift, then press D. Then I'm going to right click. Doesn't look like anything happened, but the duplicated bone is right on top of the old bone. So I'll just pull this to the side like that. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, I want to be accurate in what I said. I said it, show you multiple expressions working together. All the bones will work together to work with facial expressions. I'm thinking with this bone, what was going through my mind is having the mouth shut and then being able to make the mouth smile as well as make the mouth, turn down. So with this bone made, we're going to click here. We'll click on the bone button right here. We'll name this side underscore lip control, and then I'll press enter. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, so what we're going to do is go to the upper left, go to object mode. I'm going to click on the base mesh. Um, we're looking for here for our shape keys. We're going to make yet another shape key. So we're going to go to the right, click this plus button. We have this new shape key made. We'll name this just lip underscore control. And then with this shape key selected, we're going to go to the upper left, go to edit mode. I'll go to face select. The proportional editing tool is turned off. I'll click here to turn it on. I'll click here. The connected only isn't necessarily needed, but it's fine. So we'll leave it like that. See how the bones are like, they're not a part of this object, but they're showing what we can do to make it easier to work where we don't see these bones. Is we can go to view, and then we can go to here where we see local view. So we'll select toggle local view, and then I'll hover here, hold shift, press B, draw a zoom box to zoom in, and now we can see without those bones being there. So what I want to do is I'm going to press G. I'm going to roll when I press G, that's a grab. And then that allows us to see the proportional editing tool. So I'm rolling my mouse to make the area bigger. I'm going to press Z so we're locked to the Z axis. And then I'm going to pull this up. And you see how that looks strange? So what I'll do is roll my mouse. And now things aren't so bunched up. So I'm going to turn to the side. And I'm actually going to take this, pull that back some like that. Pull that to the side like that. Okay, so with that done, I just left clicked on nothingness. Oh. So with that done, what we're going to do is go back to view, local view, toggle local view. Seeing how this looks like how it's working with the teeth. I'm going to click here, zoom in, go to this vertex here. For this, I actually want to turn off the proportional editing tool. Just push that down like that. Left clicked on nothingness to deselect. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to go to the upper left and then select object mode to go back to object mode. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at our lip control shape key. We're going to take this setting up. And now we can see, we have a smile there. Okay, what we want to do now is we want to set things up so that our bones control our face expression. So we're going to click on this blink so we can tell this is selected because it's highlighted. We're going to go over these numbers. Then we're going to right click. And then we're going to select from this menu that popped up, add driver. So I'm going to left click on add driver. First thing we want to work with is where we see this type. We see the scripted expression. We want to click here. We have these options here, and we want to select this top option. And then where we see this object here, you're going to left click here. And if the name, not of the particular bone, but the actual armature, all right, we name the armature that has 4 bones in it face control. If you didn't see that in this list, like I can see it right here, you would just press the first, most likely the first letter, and that would pop up. So this is the armature. So we're going to left click there, right? And when we did that, we can see the eyes are reacting. When I moved the mouse, I came out of that menu. That's fine. Because what we can do is right click here. And then we're going to select edit driver. And that just makes this menu pop up again. When you're working with 3D space, X typically means left and right. Y means up and down. All right. So this X position is set up so that for us to have the eyes blink, we would have to move the bone to the left or the right. We don't want that. We want this to move up and down. So what we're going to do is left click and change this from X location to Y location, because the Y location deals with moving things up and down instead of left to right. So this space where we see world space, we want to left click here and we want to change this to local space. And then after we have all this set up, what we can do is click here, and this gives us another window that has more information about the drivers. Okay, this window here gives us more information. We'll come back to this later. But this information right here is presented in when we just add the driver. So we edit. So we'll close this. We'll right click here. We'll select edit driver. So we have this window here. So here's the name of our armature that has our bones on it. We'll left click here. And then we're going to select this E underscore control, which stands for eye control. Okay. So with that done, we'll just move our mouse and that menu will go away. Okay, to see if this works, one of the things when you're dealing with rigging, regular rigging, like when I say regular, I mean body rigging or rigging the face, make sure you're aware of which mode you're in. Sometimes you look at the bones, you're like, oh, the bones are there. I can select the bones. Yes, you can select the bones. You can also go to edit mode and select the bones. The issue is when you go to pose, you want to be in pose mode. So we're in object mode. So when you go to check to see if the bones work, make sure you're not in object mode. Make sure you're not in edit mode. The mode that you want to be in is pose mode. So once you're in pose mode and you made sure that you're in pose mode, then you'll go to the bone, select the bone, then you can go to the move tool and then see if this works. Now what's going on here is this bone is actually working from, it's working, but it's working from us moving this bone up, and that's not what we want. Okay, so how do we get this bone working the way we want it to work? Well, one thing we want to do is go to the upper left, go to object mode, click on our mesh, and then here's our driver right here. We're going to hover over these numbers, right click, and we're going to select Open Drivers Editor. Once we do that, we can see over to the right, we have F-curve, drivers, modifiers, as well as view. What we want to do is select modifiers. We have these modifiers, this add modifier button. We're going to left click and we want the generator. Now we're not going to be able to select this because we have to go to this key here, click the arrow, select right here. And now when you go to add modifier, you'll be able to select it. You want generator. So you're going to select this generator. And think of positive numbers as going up and negative numbers as going down. So we want this bone to go down, right? So what we're going to do is go to this bottom number, left click, and we'll enter in a setting of -1, then press enter. With that done, we'll click on our bones, go to the upper left, go to pose mode, and now with this bone selected, we can see that when we move down, the bone, activates how it should. However, this is a lot of movement. So I'm going to right click. When I right click, this bone jumps right back to its original position. So what we're going to do is left click on nothingness, go to the upper left, go back to object mode. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, so we're going to click on our mesh, and then we're going to go to this blank shape key, right click, select Open Drivers Editor. So I left clicked on there. We're going to go to our modifiers, and we're going to change this to -5. Press enter. Left click to get out of there. Go to the upper left. We need to click on our bones. Go to the upper left. select pose mode, and now go to this blink. Now when we pull down, you can see that our eyes are moving, and they're moving in a way that is acceptable. So I'm going to right click to get this bone to jump back to its original position. Left click on nothingness, deselect. And then I'm going to go to the upper left and then go back to object mode. Okay, the way we have things set up now, actually I'm going to click here, go to here is upper left, go to pose mode. When I click down, the eyes shut, right? When I go up, I can't cause the eyes to go up at all when I move this bone up. It would be nice if we could make the eyes open up bigger, even without setting a shape key, having the eyes go bigger. And we actually can do that. I'm going to left click here to deselect. I'm going to go to the upper left, go to object mode. Okay, what's nice is this is actually fairly easy to do. We're going to click on, and what I'm saying is I want to show you where we can move this bone up and the eyes were open somewhat wider. So it's almost like we did the work of having the eyes shut. And then even though we didn't set a shape key to have the eyes open wider, we can get that. And how can we get that? Well, right here, these settings here. So see where we see this max 1. If we go to this range minimum, if we click here, change this to negative 0.5 and then press enter. Wait a second. Negative 0.5 and press enter. There we go. Now with that set, when I click here, go to the upper left, go to pose mode, watch this. We pull down, the eyes shut. Now when we go up, you see that? How the eyes are opening wider? They're doing that because of what we did to that minimum setting. So I think that's cool. So I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. Then I'm going to go to the upper left and go to object mode. Okay, as far as rigging in Blender 2.8 compared to before with doing face rigging, like what my thoughts are, I like it better in 2.8. I think most things in 2.8 have been designed well and have improved upon previous versions of Blender. As far as rigging these other bones, we can actually make things fairly easy. We have the settings for this right here, right, for this shape key. So what we can do is right click, select copy driver, hover over this driver here, these numbers, right click, select paste driver, hover here, paste driver, hover here, paste driver. Okay, doing that allows us to already have some of the initial settings done for the bone. These still have to be set up. I'm going to click on the bones, go to edit mode. I wasn't sure if I had named these bones before or not. We're going to name, if we did, we're going to name this brow control. Click here. Name this mouth underscore close. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect. I wanted to name those bones because we still need to set things up. So I clicked on the mesh. I'm going back to our drivers. And what we're going to do is click on the driver. We'll right click and then we'll select edit driver. So this is the mouth control. So currently, because we copied the bone is being used as the E control, which is eye control. So what we're going to do is left click and we're going to select mouth close. And because we copied this driver, these other things are set up for us. if we select show in drivers, we should also have the modifier as well, which we do. So we'll click back on drivers. So this should be good to go. So I'm going to click here to select nothing. Click on the armature, go to pose mode, and then click here. I'm going to press G, then Z, and we can see the mouth is shutting. You could, if you wanted, do the negative 0.5 minimum setting for this as well. I'm going to leave this for now. We're going to click back on the mesh. We'll go to the brow control. Okay, with this brow control selected, we'll hover over these numbers, right click, then we'll go to edit driver. So we have, this is the bone, the original bone from when we copy the driver. So we'll click here. We'll select brow control. Then we'll click on the armature, go to the upper left, go to pose mode. Click on the brow, and we can see that goes down. Now we can make this go up. Let's take advantage of that. To do that, we'll go to the upper left, go to object mode. We'll click on the mesh. We have these settings here. So for this, with the brow control selected, we'll click here. We'll enter in negative 0.5 and press enter. We'll click on the armature, go to the upper left, go to pose mode, and now with this brow control bone selected, we can make the eyes go up some. I'm going to left click on nothingness to deselect, go to the upper left, then go back to object mode. Left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, we'll click on the mesh. We have this lip control here. So we'll click there, hover over these numbers, right click, select edit driver. We'll change this bone to side lip control. We'll go to this minimum setting here, click this, change this to negative 0.5, then press enter. And now we'll select the armature, go to the left, go to pose mode, click here. Oh, look at that. Okay, so this is the opposite. It's working. So what we need to do for this is let's left click on nothingness to deselect, go to the upper left, go back to object mode, select our base mesh, right click, and this time we'll select open drivers editor. We need to go to the modifiers, and then this needs to be changed to 5. So with that done, we'll click on the armature, go to the upper left, go to pose mode. So now we have our smile, and then we can actually make the mouth go the other direction as well. So right click to get this bone to go back to its original position. I'll left click on nothingness to deselect, go to the upper left, go to object mode, then I'll left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, all of our bones are set up. They're controlling the expressions as well. I would like to quickly show you how you can set up poses. Okay, when I say set up poses, I'm talking about face poses. So what we want to do is we are going to left click on our armature, go to the left hand side, go to pose mode. We're going to press A so all of these armature bones are selected. We're going to look to this button. It has like this little running man guy. We're going to scroll up and see this bone groups right here. We're going to click this arrow, click plus. And now all of these bones are in this group. So I'm going to double click here. I'm going to name this main underscore face bones, right? This expression that's on his face, we'll make that be the first pose. So we scroll down to where we see pose library. We click this arrow. We click new, right? And now this expression right here, when I click this button, a pose is going to be made. It's going to be of that expression. So I'm going to click the plus button. Okay, so that button and then add new. So now we're going to name this base. All right. So now that we have that, now let's make it so the character has kind of like a nice, like pleasant look on her face, right? So we'll click this bone here, shut the mouth, raise the eyebrows up some, then make the character smile. So we have to move all those bones to get that. Well, when you make a pose, we can do that in one press, right? So I'm going to click this plus button, select add new. I'm going to double click. I'm going to name this pose smile. Up. I messed up because I only have one bone selected. So actually let me delete that bone. Press A to select all of these bones because all of the bones that you're working with that made this pose need to be selected. So I'm going to click the plus button again, select add new. And I'm going to name this happy, right? So if I want to go back to the base pose, I can click here. And then this looks like our magnifying glass. That makes the face go to the base pose. If I want to make the face look happy, I click here. And now we have the happy pose. So I'm going to left click and then deselect. Or double click on nothingness to deselect. I'm going to go to the upper left and go back to object mode. Okay, let's give him one more pose. So we'll click on the armature bones. We'll go to the upper left, go to pose mode, and we'll click on the base. Click the, looks like a magnifying glass, right? So you might sit there and say, well, what's the deal with the bone pose group? Well, we could have just the eye bones in one pose group, and then this be another pose. This could be one bone group. This could be another bone group. So basically what we could do is like select one bone group and have just the eyes, like use this happy pose, right? Have this be one bone group, and then even though we apply the happy, just the eyes would move, but not the mouth. So you can kind of use bone groups to get even more expressions out of expressions you have here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click here. We'll push this down. We'll shut the mouth somewhat that way. Yeah, he definitely looks happier that way. So maybe we'll yeah. Here. So we have our angry look. So with that pose setup, we want to make sure we have all the bones selected. So we'll press A, right? And by the way, let's see. So if we want those bones selected, we should be able to go up here. We don't have any other bones to select. Okay, so wait a second. Okay, yeah, so we should I thought, we did have to select a sign, so I'm glad that I came back up. So it's a sign, we click off, then we click select, and then we have all of the bones. Just roll the mouse to zoom back. So anyway, with this face pose setup, we can go to the right, click this. I'll click here. I'll click this plus button, select add new, and we'll name this angry. right? So now with those, so now we can click this base and then select, looks like the magnifying glass, go to the base pose. Then we can click happy, go to happy, click angry, go to angry. So I'll click back on the base, then left click on nothingness to deselect. I'll go to the upper left, go back to object mode. No, left click on nothingness to deselect. Okay, what I showed you here is hopefully enough principles with face rigging so that you can work your way. If you want to do a more detailed face rig, be able to do that. I have another rig, face rigging tutorials. I have other face rigging tutorials on this channel. The last one I think I did was the cat face rigging, and even though that is a cat, the principles will work on a human face as well, though that's not in Blender 2.8. There's a lot more that you can do with this, but I'm hoping that this will allow you to set up your face and get the kind of animations that you would like with what I've shown you in this video. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and we share them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.